Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So it's a Friday afternoon here, and I'm just doing a spur of the moment random video because I thought of it, and it seems like a good idea. So you might wonder how I come up with my video ideas, and you know, I sit down and put a lot of thought into them, draw out an outline, and no I don't. I literally just turn on a camera and whatever comes to my mind I record. Well, I was up in the shop getting ready for a flooring order, and my dad's down here. He asked me this morning if he could use the mill to saw some hemlock logs for a personal project of his, and I said, yeah, go ahead, I'm not using it. And I hear him down here sawing, and it got me thinking, I'm going to totally surprise him. He doesn't know I'm coming with the camera, and I'm just going to sneak attack him, and we're going to do a little interview here. We'll do a little history of how this all kind of started. So I caught my dad here. He just finished milling this hemlock log, and he has no idea that this was going to happen. Basically what happened here, he asked me at lunchtime if I minded if he ran the mill. And I thought that was funny because he's the one that taught me how to run a mill and got me started in this whole thing. And it's just kind of funny how the tables have turned here a little bit because he doesn't do a whole lot of milling anymore. But so we're just going to kind of, I guess, have a little bit of an interview maybe, and kind of talk about this. Basically, I guess this is your third Woodmizer. Or yeah. I guess this one, I guess you kind of say is mine, but the third Woodmizer that's been in the family. So why don't you tell them a little bit about how you ended up getting started? What made you want to buy a sawmill?
Well, we were having some land cleared at the time, and the loggers left a lot of wood laying behind it. I thought it'd make nice lumber, and I was doing woodworking at the time, so I figured I could turn something into furniture if I could cut it.
And about when was that?
That was in the late 80s.
So I was born in 89. So that was long before I was in the picture. He was already kind of thinking along these lines. And I guess it's a little bit different than today. Woodmizer is pretty well known. Everybody, you know, that has any interest in sawmilling, you know, the Woodmizer name's ubiquitous with sawmills. I guess it was probably a little bit different for you back then.
Yeah, there was no internet. So the only information I could find was in woodworking magazines about what these sawmills were. And these little band mills were fairly new at that time. There were quite a few companies doing it. And through the research, I decided on Woodmizer, and I think I made a pretty good choice.
Yeah, they seem to have lasted the test of time here. I would assume they're the biggest, you know, portable bandsaw maker off the top of my head, but definitely the most well-known. Yeah, so you ended up buying a mill, and when I was a kid, my first memories, it sat outside. Do you remember what model that was?
It was an LT25. I don't think they make them anymore.
Yeah, and that, if I remember, you had to like hand crank it down the track. Yeah, that was, I never ran that one. I was much too young, but I remember seeing it in action. One of my first childhood memories, I don't know if it's a good memory or a bad memory, I always had to stack the slabs. He'd throw his slab wood off to the side, then cut it with a chainsaw, and he has a wood stove in his house. And that was always my job, was stacking the firewood slabs, which was kind of miserable at the time, but I guess maybe that kind of led me down the path. And then I guess it would have been around 2000 you upgraded to the next mill.
Yeah, then I bought a LT30, which was a completely manual mill.
Yeah, I remember. And that was the first one I ran. I think, boy, I was probably, about 12 when I started helping you with that, just kind of stacking boards and pulling boards off. And there was no business or anything like that. He basically just had it. I remember we always had wood around for woodworking projects, and I know he did a lot of work for the farm, different projects, cutting lumber, and every now and then I guess you'd saw for somebody, you know, somebody local here. If they'd bring you some logs, you'd cut them up for them. But but more of a hobby than anything. And so that's the mill I started running on, and that's why I kind of thought this was ironic, and what kind of spurred me to make this video, you know, out of the blue, is when he came to me and asked me if he could run the mill today, because basically he taught me everything I know about running the mill, and I just thought it was kind of funny how things have turned, because now he's more into, you know, working on his garden and homestead, not so much into the woodworking anymore, and I've kind of taken over that end of things. We ran that mill, and that's actually what I started the business with, was that manual mill. We ran that for quite a few years, did a lot of work with that, and then eventually, when was that? We bought this LT40 Super. We got this used. That probably would have been, what, like 2012-ish, I think.
Maybe even a little earlier than that.
Yeah, we got tired of running the manual mill. Those of you out there that have ever run them know, at the end of the day, that's a lot of work. You know, turning the logs by hand, clamping, unclamping constantly. So that's my plug for hydraulics. If you can fit it in your budget, buy a hydraulic mill. You'll be much happier with it. Yeah. But you know, everybody got to start somewhere, and I guess it all depends on your scale. We've kind of grown into it here, but I can't imagine going back to a manual mill.
Well, the only thing with adding the different mills, each time I was able to sell the old mill for more than what I actually paid for it.
That is one thing. That is one characteristic I've known about Woodmizer. They have excellent resale value. I think a lot of that is their service is pretty much world renowned, and they back up their equipment, their parts availability, so they have a good network. So that is, it's one of those things with any equipment, when you buy, you know, the top tier equipment, you know, it tends to hold its resale value. So that has been a nice little perk there. And you know, we really have nothing bad to say about the Woodmizer. I mean, like every other machine, you know, stuff breaks, you have to replace parts. There's other great band mills out there, don't get me wrong, but I'm pretty happy with this machine. For what we use it for, it works perfect.
One other thing I just thought of, when I started, there was no sharpening service, so you got a grinder and a setter with it.
I remember that.
There was a real learning curve, and you were breaking bands constantly because they weren't sharpened right, and that was a real pain.
Yeah, I remember that antique looking thing that actually went down the road when we sold the last mill, because I was not going to sharpen any bandsaw blades. And it's, for years we used Woodmizer's Resharp service, which I know a lot of people are upset they discontinued that here earlier this year. I will put in a plug, PA Woodmizer, Marty Parsons and their crew out there, they still sharpen Woodmizer blades. They still operate the Resharp, same as they ever have, and their service is fantastic. So anybody that's within their range, I recommend them. They do a great job. So that's just a little side note there. That's where my bands go to, because in my opinion, your time is worth too much to be fooling around sharpening bands. I leave that to the professionals. But I do remember, I think it was like a DC powered thing. It was an antique. I remember that set up in your basement as another thing as a kid, you know, fooling around grinding and setting the knives. But it's come a long way. It's actually amazing to see how far the company's gone. I remember some of those old publications. You probably have them somewhere, the old literature they used to send out, you know, the mailers and brochures, and it's amazing with the internet how things have changed. But no, it's just it's ironic, you know, Woodmizer's been part of this family and on this farm for 30 years now, at least. Well, more than 30 years, honestly. But one other thing, I guess maybe I'll throw in here, because I remember you telling me this. My grandpa, your dad, didn't he think this was about the dumbest idea of buying a sawmill? Didn't he give you a hard time about buying a sawmill?
Yeah, he did, and he's probably watching this.
He's gonna watch this. That's why I'm throwing it in there. So you never know how these things are gonna work out, but in the end, it probably wasn't such a bad idea, because I've managed to build a whole business around it, and it's done a lot of work for us here personally and on the farm, and you know, for business. So Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there. It was funny, but you know, hindsight is 20/20. But you never know how these things are going to work out. But yeah, so he's sawing for a personal project here, and you know, like I said in the intro, these videos are whatever I feel like talking about, and I just thought this was a unique one that popped in my head. But figured I'd get him on camera, sneak attack him a little bit. Hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll catch you on the next one.